Morning, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this episode of The Five Insider with David Ornstein and myself. Okay, after you finish watching, make sure you watch Five Formations. It's where Rio sits down with culture cams and they discuss how Manchester United ended Arsenal's invincible run. It's a good one. Check it out.
You've got Rooney slotting around these areas, and you've got Van Nistelrooy always on the shoulder like that. And he'd say, "Listen, I'm with you. I'm going to come in, and he'll come with you all the time."
Yeah,
Lauren, let him come in, and then there's the spaces in behind, and get him behind the fullback, in between the centre half.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's Joel Bayer here, and this is the Five Insider. Who am I joined by? The man himself, Mr. David Ornstein. How you doing? You okay?
Joe, I'm exhausted, but I'm happy it's all over. I'm going to miss it. It's a little bit sad that we won't be talking about transfers every minute of every day for the weeks ahead, but it's not too long until the January window, so we get to do it all again. And I do loads of other reporting as well that may not be as high profile, but is just as, if not more important. So I can get stuck into some of that now as well. But first, I'm going to have a little rest this weekend, and this is my final commitment for a few days.
Can you imagine, just for you guys watching, please make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe for that alone. Even though he's tired, he's made it on the Five Insider for us, of course. So, by the way, you know that your Five shirt is on its way, with Ornstein on the back. I don't know if you know that. It's coming. Yeah, don't worry, it's coming.
Now it's
but yeah,
team member,
of course. Listen, we want to look at the transfers that happened yesterday, the ones that got over the line. I want to start off with Aubameyang to Chelsea. It got done. 14 million pounds, 33-year-old from Barca to Chelsea. Was it 14 or was it 16 million? Because I saw in some reports it was 14, some was 16.
Yeah, so the final proposal that Chelsea made coming into deadline day was around 7.5 million euros plus Marcus Alonso. I suspect there was a counter from Barcelona, and then they met somewhere in the middle. So I don't know if it was 14, 12 million pounds, euros. I think it was around the 12 mark, and I'm not sure about the exact currency conversion at the moment. But from a personal point of view, and feel free to argue it in a different direction, I think that's a pretty good arrangement for all parties. Barcelona eased their financial problems a tiny bit. Chelsea get one of the best strikers in the European game, and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang gets to be front and center of a project once again, which wasn't going to be the case at Barcelona after they signed Lewandowski. Of course, it's a 2-year contract with an option of a third, and that third year will be determined by the percentage of appearances Aubameyang makes in year 2. So there's some incentive for him there as well. But he's worked with Thomas Tuchel before. They've had a really good relationship. I've got no doubt that he's going to score goals and contribute quite heavily to what Chelsea are trying to do. They needed that centerpiece for their attack, and now they've got it once he is fit, because he suffered a broken jaw in that very distressing robbery at his home, violent attack that he suffered and a struggle that ensued. Depends if he has surgery or not. If he does, it's going to keep him out for a relatively short space of time. If he doesn't, it's going to keep him out for a bit longer. The World Cup is not too far away, but he said in his own Instagram post, he'll be back in no time. Chelsea will be excited. Their rivals less so. And I'll be intrigued to know what Arsenal fans like yourself, Joel, think about it, because he's a former captain of yours.
Before I tell you how I feel about it, I just want to look at his stats. Last season, 17 appearances, 11 goals. He did an exceptional job.
Champions League qualification.
Yeah. However, his last 2 seasons at Arsenal weren't that good. I mean, he had 14 goals in 45 appearances. Now, for a man of his stature, it just wasn't great overall. How do we know that he's gonna refine his goal scoring form in the Premier League? Is it down to his happiness? What is it down to?
We don't know is the answer. Nobody knows. You can't provide guarantees in this industry, but you can go on precedent. And whenever he has been happy and settled, he has scored goals. That happened at Borussia Dortmund. It happened at Arsenal. The periods in which that has not been the case is when he hasn't been so happy or settled, towards the end at Borussia Dortmund and towards the end at Arsenal. And there were some very specific circumstances involved in both cases. As you say there, he scored goals. He's fired Barcelona to Champions League qualification for this season, which is absolutely massive for them. He's 33 years old, so he's coming towards the twilight of his career. but his body's in fantastic shape. And he always seems to strike up a good rapport with his teammates. You know, many of them at Chelsea he'll know. And so it's just really an estimation, a projection on how you have viewed his career until now and how you think he'll go forward, the way the team that he's coming into play and what they need. And when you combine all of those factors, what's at stake here? He's been given the cursed number 9 shirt. It wouldn't surprise me if he lifts that curse and has a really good time at Stamford Bridge. But there will be many eyes on him. There will be many eyes on this Chelsea project, record-breaking spending for them. And although it's a new ownership and people will be relatively patient, it's not been the best start on the pitch. They're going to need to pick up quickly. And it's going to be a fascinating time ahead for the men in blue.
I think it's important for us to look at the players who have played for both Chelsea and Arsenal. For you guys watching, Emmanuel Petit, William Gallas, Ashley Cole, Lassana Diarra, Petr Cech, Cesc Fabregas, Yossi Benayoun, David Luiz, Willian, Olivier Giroud, and now Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. So we'll see how he does. It's heartbreaking to answer your previous question before. As I cannot imagine seeing him in a blue shirt, and I did this morning, and it was just hopefully he doesn't do a front or back flip when he plays against us. That will just be the absolute worst, David.
I think he's got a tattoo of his children and him walking out at the Emirates to sign his new contract a couple of years ago, so that's going to rub a bit of extra salt in the wound. Or if it doesn't work out for him well there, then I think Arsenal fans are going to be quite happy.
We'll see. Talking about Arsenal, actually, even though Hector Bellerin's contract was already terminated, but he makes his move back to Barcelona. Yeah. Now, if you guys don't know, he came up through the academy, the ranks over there, and we thought he was going to Real Betis. He had a nice loan spell with him last season. How did this Barcelona deal come about?
Yeah, well, Hector Bellerin's priority has been to leave Arsenal this summer after a successful loan spell at Real Betis, in which he won the Spanish Cup. He felt that his future did not lie at Arsenal, and I don't think Arsenal saw him as being part of their plans either. So it was about how a move was going to come about. Arsenal wanted to receive a transfer fee for him, which is why it didn't happen until now. And they thought there was still some value there, even with a year to go on his contract. But the teams who showed most interest, the likes of Betis, as you say, I think Barcelona were always in the mix to some extent, Atletico Madrid, Villarreal, there wasn't any money on offer. They would obviously take on salary and potentially offer some future bonuses to Arsenal, but not that transfer fee. And Edu, Arsenal's technical director, I think was holding out for that. And so in the end, it became a discussion of whether they would be able to terminate the contract, and right down to deadline day when things started shifting, didn't they? Because Serginho Dest was heading on his way out of Barcelona to AC Milan, a contract termination, I think that was. And so perhaps a vacancy was arising back at Barcelona. The way that the negotiations went with Barcelona was that it was actually a free transfer. And that allows Arsenal to retain a 25% sell-on clause. Now, people may be watching this and say, but he's only signed a year-long contract, so when are they going to sell him? But I'm told this was how the legal side of things needed to work. I don't know if that contract can be extended and then the sell-on clause becomes applicable, but we only report what we have sourced properly and corroborated. And so that deal was done, and pretty swiftly, to be fair, once Arsenal agreed to let him go, and he was awaiting permission to go and travel for a medical, and it was all done and dusted. But to answer your question on Real Betis, well, they have financial problems of their own. They've had to pull some economic levers in a not too dissimilar way to Barcelona to raise revenues and allow them to do a bit in the market. But that bit did not extend to Hector Bellerin, unfortunately for them, and for his dream connection with them, which we saw last season. Villarreal did show up late doors, from what I hear, but Barcelona was the direction of travel. It all worked out pretty well. And let's see if he plays and has a real impact there. I think most of us who have seen his career would say that he's done really well and wish him only the best for the future.
That's really interesting, David. And I would like to stick on the Arsenal topic. It looked like we were going to get someone coming through the door, but in the end, it never quite happened, did it?
Yeah, Douglas Luiz became the sort of focus of Arsenal's attention on deadline day. I'm not sure he was previously, because initially Arsenal were looking to bring in a wide attacker after sanctioning Nicola Pepe's loan move to Nice. That left them one winger down in terms of numbers. And their top target, as we talked about, was Pedro Neto of Wolves. But it was always going to be really tricky because Wolves had no intention or desire to sell him. And if they were going to, the asking price was going to be huge. And we said that they have other options, and Mudryk at Shakhtar Donetsk was one of them. But then, as I revealed on The Athletic, the injury to Mohamed El Neni was substantial, and it was going to keep him out for a considerable amount of time. We don't know the exact duration. On top of that, Thomas Partey is currently out with what is said to be a relatively minor muscular injury. And so it left Arsenal short in central midfield. So they had to pivot from that wide target to a holding central midfielder. It was never realistic for them, given how much money they've spent this summer, to do both. And again, a number of options would have been in the mix. Yuri Tielemans was one of them, because we know they've had strong admiration for him and might have done a deal if the numbers were able to work. But in the end, he stayed at Leicester. And so the focus shifted to Douglas Luiz, a player that Arsenal have been linked with for a long time. Brazil international, so Edu, the technical director at Arsenal, will know him. Many of Arsenal's players are Brazilian. His representative, Kia Jarabchian, has had some dealings, has been well documented with Arsenal in recent years in particular. And so it seems something may be struck. Arsenal went in, I think it was around £20 million, was rebuffed. Back in £23-ish million, rebuffed. And then finally £25 million. And that too was rejected, because Aston Villa said throughout that he was not for sale, that he would not be going anywhere on deadline day. They intend to keep him, despite the fact that he hasn't played that much, despite the fact that when he has played, I don't think he has made the impact that he or Villa would have expected. And despite the fact that he's out of contract in the summer of 2023. So on the day we record this, he's essentially becoming a free agent, because come January, the next window, he can negotiate with overseas clubs to join on a Bosman in the summer of 2023, unless he signs a new contract. And also Aston Villa had bought in a midfielder, Leander Dendoncker, from Wolves on deadline day. So that got a lot of people saying, there's the replacement, Luiz to Arsenal, done deal. But they managed to stand firm. Arsenal didn't break through. It was Arsenal who denied Villa last summer. Emile Smith Rowe, do you remember that? Now the tables had turned, and it was Villa denying Arsenal. And Arsenal will have to go with what they've got for these weeks up until the World Cup, and then a short period after the World Cup before the January transfer window opens. They'll hope that Partey, El Neni return, Sambi Lokonga, Xhaka, Zinchenko, and maybe others can deputise in those midfield roles, and that they can keep the momentum going. And if they need to strengthen in the winter window, they can.
Well, then I think it then leaves us in a good position, because if, for example, you have Tielemans, who I'm sure he's free, he can go on a free next summer, right?
As things stand, yeah.
Yeah, so that means that we could sign him in January with an agreement to start, in the new season. So
he's still at a good age as well, and so is Douglas Luiz. He's only 24, and therefore there are some good options, and there will be more around Europe as well if it comes to the summer of 2023. And Arsenal still wanting a midfielder. We saw Liverpool took Arthur on loan, which we're going to talk about, so they may be in the market for one. Chelsea took the similar position with Denis Zakaria before the deadline. So that seems to be the in thing now, the number 6.
The number 6. So if we can focus on Zakaria, that I didn't see that coming, if I'm honest with you, David. How did that come about?
Yeah, Zakaria. I don't know how we're going to pronounce it, but we know that he's a good player, and that it hasn't quite worked out at Juventus so far. He joined in January of this year, hasn't played too big a part at the Allianz Stadium Arena. I can't remember exactly what it's called, in Turin. And but he did fantastically well for Borussia Mönchengladbach previously. He's a Swiss international. He's a top player from what I have seen of him. Previously, I think he was at Young Boys and started at Servette, which is a really good schooling for many players who have come through in the game. And I started to get whispers that he could be one on the move, because I think a number of clubs had the opportunity to sign him or had looked into it or discussed it, but I didn't know of anything developing. And then bang, the news broke that Chelsea were exploring a potential deal. So I quickly made some calls and established that he was undergoing a medical in Turin, that the clubs had reached an agreement on a 1-year loan with an option to buy, and that he was subject to medical tests being clear and okay on his way to Stamford Bridge. The medical got done without a problem. It was then down to paperwork and just making sure that documentation was processed in time for the 11 p.m. deadline, and it was. So out of the blue, Chelsea get what I think is a really good signing in a position that they were looking to strengthen him because, of course, N'Golo Kante has suffered with some injury problems. Jorginho's not been in the best form. Mateo Kovacic, too, has had some physical issues. And so they were looking a little bit bare there. They were interested in signing Frenkie de Jong, but his preference was always to stay at Barcelona. And so Zakaria, it is.
Brilliant stuff. I also want to look at Arthur Melo, as we discussed briefly in our conversation. Now, that's complete. Loan move to Liverpool with an option of 37.5 million.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested to see him in action. What do you make of him as a player?
Yeah, so Arthur Melo obviously shot to prominence at Barcelona and then was involved in that swap deal, wasn't he? I think with Pierre-Emerick, which was a strange sort of accounting mechanism by the looks of it. Hasn't worked out too well. Arsenal were heavily linked with him previously. That was a loan possibility. Was it in January 2022? But it never came to fruition in the end. Of course, he's a good player. He's a Brazil international in his own right, at a good age as well. I don't think he's really come on to fulfill the potential yet that a lot of people had down for him. He's suffered with some injury problems. But crucially for Liverpool, he provides a body, and that's what they needed, especially after the injury to Jordan Henderson against Newcastle. And it seems that they moved overnight for a reinforcement to add to what is an increasingly depleted squad who's suffered from a number of injuries in pre-season and this early part of the campaign. Now, when the news was breaking and we reported that he was flying over for a medical, we weren't hearing of there being an option to buy. And I was reading reports from local journalists on Merseyside who were saying Liverpool said there was not an option to buy, but Juventus then released a statement saying that there was a 37.5 million euros option to buy following a 4.5 million euros loan fee. And that took some people by surprise. A number of journalists deduced that perhaps Liverpool didn't mention it because they don't intend to take it up in the summer of 2023, when they'll have all their players hopefully fit and available, and then they'll have the chance to either take Arthur on or let him go back to Juventus. I don't see this being a long-term solution or plan for Liverpool, but you just never know with these things. On the one hand, we saw what happened when they brought in somebody like Ozan Kabak in January of 2021 on a sort of temporary basis, and they didn't take up the option to sign him. But if Arthur's a success, I guess the mechanism's there. So why not? It's not an obligation. And it seems like it's probably a beneficial deal for all parties, because Juventus, if he wasn't in their plans, get a bit of remuneration for him, a bit of the wages taken off their bill. He gets to play football, all being well, with Liverpool having so many matches, and Liverpool get another option, and a really good one at that, in a squad that kind of needs them ahead of this long and disjointed season with the World Cup ahead too, a World Cup that Arthur Melo will want to be playing at.
Now, before I move on to looking at Man United's current situation, I want to look at one more player. Manuel Akanji, centre-back, bought for 17 million by Man City. Physically strong, physically dominating. I mean, honestly, I thought they were done with their transfers. They keep picking up these acute signings, coming from Borussia Dortmund. Experience. Yes, he was singled out in the 2019-2020 season when they were coming up against Bayern Munich. But overall, I think that's a smart signing.
Yeah, so do I. And when I broke it on Tuesday, it was a big surprise to me, because I thought Manchester City were pretty much done and dusted. They often see a player or two leave before the deadline after they've done the bulk of their business, maybe some trading of young players in and out. But at senior level, it wasn't on the horizon. We started to get a few whispers that something might be afoot Sunday, Monday. And then when you speak to people around the game, they start saying, yeah, City are going for a centre-back. And wow, you better look into this one and make your calls and establish that Akanji was the target. I think they had a number of options, to be fair, as Man City and most clubs always would. But that deal was there to be done. Firstly, he only had a year left on his contract. So Borussia Dortmund, if they received a decent price for him, were always likely to sell. I think Leicester City had been linked with him previously as a potential replacement for Wesley Fofana, but that didn't come to fruition. And then City moved at what seems a pretty decent price. I was told 17.5 million euros was the target when they were negotiating to get it done. It seems it may have been done for around that figure or a little bit lower. And Akanji seemed keen on coming to the Premier League. He has been troubled a bit by injuries and sort of dips and troughs in form. But when he came through and when we started to hear about his name, he was known as being, a really top-level player. And I think he's shown that for Borussia Dortmund and Switzerland, another Switzerland international coming to the Premier League. And a really intelligent boy. He spoke incredibly well in his interview after joining Man City. Very impressive. You speak to people around the German game in Dortmund and Switzerland, and they speak incredibly highly of him. And City are big on characters. They're also keen on reinforcing a defence that was or has been struggling with injuries to Laporte, John Stones over various periods of time. Nathan Ake has been carrying an injury as well. So a lot of people were saying, why does City need another central defender? But if you look at it, it probably adds quite nicely to their complement. And I don't think they ever replaced, in number anyway, Vincent Kompany. Obviously, Ruben Diaz has come in since then, but numbers-wise, I think they'll be happy. And certainly adding another leader to the pack is never going to be a bad thing. So, yeah, good work from Man City, that one.
Now, Willian, signing from Corinthians to Fulham. I haven't seen him play in Brazil, David, but if he's still got legs in him, that's not a bad signing for Fulham, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, on paper, that appears to be a really shrewd move from Fulham, and they needed that sort of wide attacker. That was one of their targets. And so, in theory, Willian is a bit of a coup for Fulham. Now, I didn't watch a lot of him in Brazil. It doesn't appear to have gone too smoothly, given that he's leaving after a relatively short amount of time. And when you see that sort of move, you think that that's where he's going to sort of end his career, back to his homeland. Yet here he is returning to London. The Arsenal move did not work out at all. It was a really promising start on his debut, ironically, at Fulham. But thereafter, just didn't click, did it? I think some memories are quite short. In his final season at Chelsea, I think his stats were fantastic in terms of assists and goals, maybe his most productive season for many years. And that's why Arsenal signed him, no doubt. So Fulham will think that there's still a player in there. Of course, he's getting towards the end of his career, but I saw some images that Fulham released of him training as part of their announcement. And he looked in much better shape than I remember him being towards the end at Arsenal when people were taking sort of pot shots at him. And if he's in the right physical condition, mentally, he's been a top player. So you expect the highest level. He's won trophies and the biggest ones at that. So, yeah, I don't know the ins and outs in this one, and I don't know how it's going to pan out. But on the surface, I think Fulham will be really pleased about that. And if he can stay fit and, recapture just a semblance of what he's done previously, then he should be a really good addition.
Previously at Chelsea, you mean? So, yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Let's stick to the Chelsea part of his career.
The last ones I want to focus on is Bamba Dieng. That was an interesting one, wasn't it? I'm sure we saw it all over social media yesterday. Failed his medical at Nice after the Leeds deal was hijacked. So on deadline day, he had a verbal agreement to join Leeds, travels to the airport for his flight. Nice makes an offer for him. He rejects Leeds, travels to Nice for his medical, and then he fails his medical. And he seems now to have remained at Marseille. An unbelievable one. That you broke that one, didn't you, David?
Well, so Bamba Dieng was always going to be one that was in the mix on deadline day because a number of clubs had been looking at him, including, I must say, Fulham, because they were trying to reinforce their attack. But as the sort of hours and minutes wore on, it became clear that Leeds were the most likely destination. And they put a package together. I think it was around 10 million euros agreed with Marseille. A 4-year contract was lined up. They put on a private jet to fly him over from France to Leeds to undergo his medical and hopefully sign that contract and provide Leeds with the attacker that they were looking for. Maybe not the number one target, because they had tried and ultimately failed to land Cody Gakpo, with their director of football, Victor Orta, heading over to the Netherlands with the plan of bringing Gakpo back to Yorkshire, and it didn't happen. He ended up staying at PSV Eindhoven. So Bamba Dieng became the key target thereafter, and he headed to the private jet terminal ready to fly, but he didn't fly. He received a counter offer from OGC Nice, and Nice have been making shapes, so to speak, in the market, haven't they, this summer, with some really impressive signings under Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Sir Dave Brailsford is working there now. And so that gave Bamba Dieng food for thought. Before we knew it, he was not boarding that private jet. He was on his way to the facility of OGC Nice to undergo a medical. It then emerged that that medical had not gone to plan. Now, just to correct you slightly, medicals are not passed or failed. Tests are conducted and recruitment decisions are taken based on the outcome of those results. Clearly, something came up in the medical that OGC Nice were concerned about, and reports emerged that the deal was off. So then I made some calls and established that it was not off, and that he would be undergoing more medical tests on Friday to ascertain the full extent of the problem, and to decipher whether this deal could be revived. And therefore, it is not off. And there'll be people watching this saying, but the transfer window has closed. But in France, each club is allowed one joker signing. And that means that a player can be signed from another French club or Ligue 1 club, I don't know specifically, outside of the transfer window. So subject to these medical tests, OGC Nice are prepared to make Bamba Dieng their one joker signing. And it could, for him, have a remarkable ending in what's been an extraordinary tale.
So wait, David, just before we wrap this up, I just want to understand, is that joker signing per team or by the league itself?
Yeah, there is one joker signing allowed per club outside of the transfer window. And I think it needs to be French team to French team or Ligue 1 team to Ligue 1 team. But every Ligue 1 team is allowed one joker signing, a player who is signed outside of the transfer window. So this will be the one, subject to medical tests, that OGC Nice attempt to pull off.
Wow. You know what? I just want to know who's going to be paying the bill for the jet to Leeds. That's what I want to know.
Well, I presume it's Leeds, because they're the ones that would have put it on for him to travel. But I don't know.
They're not going to get the money back, though.
Well, ask for a refund. I'm not sure they'll be successful.
Well, David, thank you very much for that. Now, for everyone watching, we do have a video with David Ornstein coming out in the AM, so make sure you watch it. It's going to be Man United's ins and outs. We're going to see their current situation after the transfer window, also ahead of the Man United versus Arsenal game, which I'm completely excited for. So, David, thank you very much for joining us. Guys, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe, and follow us on socials. We will be back soon on The 5 Insider. Peace.